welcome back. Okay, so I hope that in the previous video you followed on with the Quadro tool. So like I said, in Retopology we start with half the side and then we mirror it. So what I like doing with my Retopology is first getting all the main lines for the mirroring effect in place. Now I'm going in the front view, which is space on the keyboard, and then Maya with the mouse, and then you choose your view. Okay, just getting a bit closer so I can get the line aligned. It doesn't let me draw in that mode. Sorry. Okay. Let's rename my polysurface. My keyboard wasn't connected. It switches off at some time because I use a small keyboard for my navigation. Okay, so let's put it in the same group. Okay, we need to put back on the Quadro tool. What I'm looking on here is how I'm gonna approach the top bit. Where is the details? Yes, I would apologize on top, but it's not gonna give me that detail, is it? Unless then I do other stuff in ZBrush, like a projection on the top of the Retopology from our previous model, and then even then, we're not gonna have enough geometry for all these detail which is on the back. So what I've decided later on to do is just do it as separate objects. I'll show you. Let's just concentrate on the Retopology at the moment. So don't forget that your high poly model needs to be live with the sticking tool, which is here on top. You can see with my mouse. And I do like drawing my dots most of the time. You will see the way I work. Everybody works in a different way, and everybody prefers doing different things in a different way. So for the moment, let's just get the main line, half line there, and then we can start connecting the rest of the body parts. And I usually try with quite big faces in the beginning. We can always Command Z to undo. Sometimes the dot gets underneath the other, because it's a lot of geometry underneath from the high poly. So you will find it that sometimes you can't move some of the dots for some reason because you can't access it. I don't know how to explain it, but just you need to play around a little bit with it to get the hang of it. So we're doing the neckline at the moment, moving a little bit the vertices around so we can smooth it. There is if you hold shift, then you can smooth. It says relax, so when it says relax, you can smooth the lines, the faces, the vertices, the edges. Let's move this one a little bit. Yeah, so we are up to the other half. Let's connect this bottom from the chin up to the forehead, to the lips, where we started. I always try to do bigger faces in the beginning, and then afterwards we might add at the end Once we've connected everything and we're happy with everything, we can add loops somewhere here and there. Okay, I'm trying to go in the bottom view because it's easier to see the line. You see how we are quite far away from the line for the mirror effect. So let's move that next to the line. There we are. Let's move that vertex there. I like taking my time, and I find Retopology quite comforting. And it's really nice to actually see you literally exploring the model, how we've created the model, you know, and where inspecting where we need more loops afterwards, so we can get the effect we need, but not create too much geometry, so it's workable with, you know, because like I mentioned in the previous video, we don't want that much geometry for games and animation because it's not doable, but it's very, very difficult working with a lot of geometry, and there are limitations. You got much more options when the geometry is just right, if may I say it this way, just right. But it's very difficult, again, getting the geometry just right. So you get the desired effect as well. Yeah, because for animation is okay, but then we come to texturing. You'll see later on we come to texturing as well, and if we don't have sometimes enough geometry for our normal map, I know for some of you that might not make sense, but for our normal map, it won't work when we're baking the maps. So there is it's a very, very long process. It's making me want to fall asleep. It's comforting, but very long process. It's demanding. Let's zoom in. Spacebar on the keyboard, Maya perspective view. We're back in the perspective view. And I like saving my projects. I'm just making sure it's in the right folder. But Control and S to quickly save the project. Yeah, we've got a nice line there, don't we? Let's straighten this up a bit. So don't worry about the detail under the chin. Obviously, it's not in the center. So just ignore that for the time being. Later on, we will deal with this. Let's do the main retopology now. And when we come to the lips part, there we want it separated. We don't want to connect that because afterwards, that space is going to create our mouth cavity, which we're going to extrude inside. We need a mouth cavity, so when we animate it, there is something there, isn't there? So we can place the tongue as well. Let's finish that line on top of the back as well. It's always good practice getting these main lines locked in, so you know you have those lines. They're very important. And I usually actually try to do two of those, one next to each other, to have it like in a row. I don't know whether it makes sense to you. Here it doesn't matter that I've done it like that big face, long. It's more long than big. It doesn't matter, that will be fixed afterwards. All we want is just this main edge loop, edge line. I'm not too sure about the terminology. I guess all of it will do, but we want to get this main loop in. So we can connect it afterwards. Oops, didn't want to do that. Oh, good. I didn't want to do that for sure. Sometimes it does it, so be careful. Just Command Z, Command Z. In my case, twice Command Z, so I remove. I didn't want that. Sometimes it does do it. And you can see that my computer is a little bit in delay creating the face. That means that it's calculating the geometry and it's a little bit heavy on it. To be honest, on see edge loop, that's control, and then left mouse click, it will give you an additional edge loop. All the keyboard mouse shortcuts are here. Just expand this and all the shortcuts are there. Sometimes I need to look at it because if I haven't worked with the Quadro tool for a while, then you forget, don't you? If you don't use something for a while, then you just need a minute to reset. So what was I saying is that that will be fixed afterwards, regardless of how long they are. We just want the main line there. It's a demanding process, but I find it really comforting, really nice. Oh yes, I was saying because Maya 2020, I have a MacBook Pro, which is with the first M1 chip that they did. I think it was back in 2020. And with my 2020 version, the Quadro 2 was flying on my computer. I had no problem whatsoever. Once I installed my 2022, that's a different story. So everything changed. My 2022, it's a little bit heavier than my 2020. And there is other difference later on. It's within R-Node and the color scheme and rendering. And that's why I think it's much better rendering with R-Node. It's if I have a chance, maybe I will do for the same environment, I will do one in 2020 and one in 2022, so we can compare it. But yeah, my 2022 is much heavier, so that's why even my computer got a little bit, slow and lazy. So at some point, I think I've had enough, and I just moved on to my stronger machine. I've got one for separate for rendering. Okay. So now we're gonna get the loop around the leg, because that's usually when we do UV unwrapping, which we are not gonna cover in detail in this project with Pascal character creation, because later on we will do the UVs in ZBrush, because I find that it's quicker and easier. And for a cartoon character like this, where I used, I think it's called vertex painting, because that's what it used to be called in Blender when I was doing the vertex painting. When we are painting, hand painting, that's how I created the textures for Pascal later on in ZBrush, which can be done in Substance Painter as well. But I find that the normal map coming naturally from ZBrush works much better than if I need to bake a normal map in Substance Painter. So when I can avoid it, I don't do it. But I guess it's about experience as well, and everything else. But yeah, that's the method we're gonna use for this, for Pascal. We're gonna UV unwrap it in ZBrush and texture it in ZBrush. So I was talking about the UV unwrapping. Usually, if we are gonna be doing them properly, the UV unwrapping, we will need that loop there around the leg. So I can easily cut off. That's what we say. We're literally cutting it off, the faces and the edges and everything else. I don't know whether it's not confusing for the people who don't know too much about UV unwrapping, but yeah, maybe we can cover a little bit more about UV unwrapping. But yeah, so basically I wanted that loop there so I can UV unwrap it easier afterwards. But for this project I was a bit lazy and I used ZBrush. You'll see it's very quick and easy with ZBrush, and it works very well, because later on we'll import it back into Maya and we'll render it with our node, and you'll see it works really well. So I guess you need to, you know, choose for what it could work and for what it could not work. Yeah, it's a fiddly job, isn't it? Retopology. And I like having two loops next to each other in one before I start connecting things afterwards, if that makes sense. Because eventually, where I'm creating that second loop that I want, but eventually that loop I'll need to connect to the loop that I've created for the mirror effect there in the beginning. And we always want to have nice four faces with four edges. That's the goal. Okay, if it makes sense. Well, once the ones who are not as experienced as, you know, doing those things, you just need to practice and you get there. A lot of practice and hard work to get you anywhere. Yeah, I don't like the legs that much. I mean, they're not proper, and I think afterwards I just amended them a little bit. Before I brought it back into ZBrush afterwards for texturing. Yeah, sometimes it's just not working, is it? I'm trying to do one thing and the Quadro 2 is doing another thing. And deleting history, yes, that's what I did. Sometimes it does help if you just go and do delete history. That means that it's clearing out all these calculations. The computer doesn't need to do that many calculations, you know. So it does help now and again to go into edit, delete by type history. I try not to do delete history all, because that could get you in trouble later on when you have some deformers on. It actually got me in trouble a few times, deleting the history to all. So good practice for me is delete history, but not all. Just select the model you want to delete history for and just delete the history for that one. Because if you have a complicated project and you have a lot of deformers on one of the objects, let's say, or even more objects, well, then you're in trouble if you don't have autosave on. And more copies, because sometimes it takes time to set up a lot of deformers. And if you do delete history all, well, it will delete the history for all, and it will delete all the deformers as well along with it. Yeah, been there, done that. So yeah, good practice for me. Delete history, but only delete history, not all. Okay, so we're getting the ankles area there, right? You can, instead of doing just half side and mirroring, you can do symmetry as well, and it will draw here is the symmetry on the right hand side where my mouse now is hovering over. But I find that it's better working for me this way rather than doing a symmetry, drawing with symmetry. So you just see what works for you best. Okay, let's create that loop there around the front leg. And that's why I like drawing the dots myself, because I can, you know, decide where to put them. Sometimes when you extrude the whole loops, I spend more time than amending each face at some point, or rather than just drawing it where I want it. But you need to find your own way. don't you? Everybody works differently. Oh, that's a long one, and we're not even the beginning. Oh my gosh, that's 43 minutes. Yeah, sometimes I've been doing an hour without a break, and sometimes it does get a bit heavy if you don't get too many breaks. Oh, I didn't want to do that. No, or maybe I did. Is it going to work that way? Not too sure. Yeah, I don't want that they're connected to the edge. Probably remove it afterwards. And when they're so close, you know, it offers you to join somewhere, but it doesn't look right where it offers you to join. Oops. Command Z to undo. Command Z is my favorite shortcut key. No, I don't want that way. There you go. It's not gonna work. I can't add another loop there if I had it that way. We're gonna be connecting it to the other part after. Let's just do the main ones. Looking at it and thinking, how do I want this? There we go. That's much better, isn't it? The less in the beginning, the better. The less geometry we have in the beginning, the better. Then we can just keep adding up where we need it, and for the connection part, adding additional loops as well. Let's add a loop there. And the thing with this is that you need to keep turning around, zooming in, especially zooming in. And I found it really, really frustrating when I used to have a smaller graphics tablet. It was so frustrating. But now with a bigger screen, it's so much easier because you can see so much better. And I don't need to be going like really zooming in because you can still see quite good even though you're not that close. And I think that's the most struggle I had with the smaller graphics tablet was for topologizing. That was really painful. And the other thing is, I don't know what, it might be a good tip for everybody. I used to have my keyboard at the back of my screen, so quite far away. Because for me to be in front of the screen, it just did not work for using the shortcut keys. But this graphics tablet, which I recently bought, it's got a little keyboard. It's wireless one, and it's I stick it on the screen, and it's literally next to my hand, and it's a small one. And my hand used to cramp so much, not anymore, because it's resting as well at the same time. Where when I had the bigger keyboard, it just, especially with retopologizing, it just, my hand was cramping all the time. And now it's so much better. I've forgotten actually about that. Yeah, let's create the main loop for the eye socket. And what I think this time, usually for when we're doing the retopology, and then bring back the Retopology in ZBrush, and then we can project the same geometry we had from before to the new one. So we keep our Retopology the way we have it, but we still keep the one for the normal map. I don't know whether it makes sense. It needs to be shown for somebody who hasn't done that before. It wouldn't make sense. I know it wouldn't for me a long time ago when I used to do this. But all the sockets needed to be closed. Like for example, we have Command Z, Command Z, Command Z. Yeah, I didn't want to do that. Yeah, the let's say the eye cavity, like it is now, it has to be like this. The mouth cavity as well, it needs to be closed. There shouldn't be any holes because otherwise you can't project on the model. But I remember the first time when I was working with Blender, the first time when I was working with a tutorial, which was showing us how to extrude and create the eye sockets and cavity. They didn't close the holes. They just amended it and left it open. And this time, not for the mouth I closed, but because he's got like a throat, which I don't know, it would have worked if I left the hole at the bottom. But for the eyes, I left them open, and it worked really well again, because I didn't need to project the Retopology model in ZBrush afterwards. That's what I decided to do, you know. I just decided to do the Retopology, go back in ZBrush, add a little bit more detail, and yeah. So I don't want to do that there. I was just testing how I'm gonna connect, because usually what's good practice is, what I've learned is, as many edges you have from the top lip, you should have the same amount from the bottom one, so they can, when they close, they kind of overlap, if it makes sense. So here I was counting and trying to imagine if I close those edges from the top, how are they going to meet with the bottom ones? Because you can see, let me show you with my mouse. Since this is a voice over recording, I can hover over with the mouse while the video is playing. Here is my edge, and here is my other edge. So basically these ones need to come down and connect with, I think, this one with this one, this one with this one, and then it gets really confusing. So then at some point I had to count it. And still at the end, when I was doing the blend shapes, it wasn't. So half the time I am trying to do the stuff that I've been taught, that I've learned, but half the time doesn't turn out to be, and then you just figure it out on your own, I guess, by learning how to overcome problems and how to avoid mistakes, learn from the mistakes that we've done with the previous project. So yeah. How much longer do we have? Oh dearie. Okay. Yeah, it's a fiddly job, but sometimes it's so comforting just doing the Retopology, listening to music, before the kids get back from school. I didn't want to put a dot there. Command Z to undo it. Just wanted to move. Sometimes you need to make sure that this move tool is on, not the drawing tool. Yeah, it's a slow job, but so rewarding at the end, isn't it? See, I'm counting now. Still didn't turn out to be the same, but yeah, I figured it out at the end. for closing the eyelids. It was a bit fiddly, but my apologies. Making me fall asleep, making me want to fall asleep. And yeah, you can use the shift and just smooth it out, but then it's not going to go the direction that I want it to go yet. When I have only one loop, I don't like using the smooth tool because on the quad row, because then it doesn't put it in the direction. Sometimes it doesn't go in the direction that I want it to go. Later on, we're going to be using the smooth on the quad row tool. You see, sometimes it's offering me to do a face, but it's not where I want it. So sometimes you need to hover over and just remove this, because otherwise it's gonna create the face where you don't want it. I remember in the beginning when I was we did I learned what's Retopology and how to do Retopology actually in Blender, and I remember that when we did the Retopology in Blender, we were constantly, as far as I can remember, we were constantly switching from sculpt mode to edit mode, and we used I think shrink wrap modifier, as far as I can remember, shrink wrap modifier, and projection modifier afterwards with it. So that's similar to what I would have done if I wanted to project this topology into my other model that I exported from ZBrush, if it makes sense. So in Blender, yes, it's similar. So instead of having a live, making the high poly live like we did here, we used the shrink wrap modifier, and we kept going from sculpt mode as well to edit mode, so we can like smooth it and whatnot. I found it really, really challenging, and it was good. I remember the part where we added the mouth cavity and the eye sockets. Because they were enclosed, now it makes sense to me, because when he was using on the tutorial, they were using the shrink wrap modifier, but there is a way on the modifier to exclude certain vertices that you don't want to be reflected by the modifier. And now it makes sense to me when I was doing the projection in ZBrush. But what I'm trying to say is, once I moved on to Maya, Retopology for me became easier because I had to do less stuff. I just use CTRL tool for the time being. I don't say that the way that we did it in Blender is actually, it was pretty good, you know, and I've learned a lot. But I find it that the CTRL tool is amazing for Retopology. It's really, really good. Yeah, let's move those a little bit up. Come on. I hate when that happens, you know. Now I need to turn a little bit on an angle to be able to, or delete the dots. Now, there we go, we use the Extrude tool. So tap on the keyboard, and when it says extrude, extrude. Yeah, because sometimes the geometry is like on the edge or something, and it can't really I don't know how to explain it. You just need to play with it a little bit, and you know, you will know what the tool is doing and what to avoid. So I'm trying to delete that face, I think. So what was it? Alt Shift, I think. Or Option Shift in Mac. Need to double check the keyboard, no shortcuts. Same goes for the mouth, like with the eyes. We need to have equal, delete that vertex. You need to be careful because sometimes you might just draw a vertex and not see it, and that vertex will be just standing alone all by itself, causing you trouble afterwards. Yeah, the the mouth faces need to be the same amount, like on the top and in the bottom. You'll see later on for animation as well, and everything just makes sense. I didn't want to do that. There we are. That's what I wanted to do. Oh, this is a very long one. I do apologize. I should have cut it short, but I think I just wanted to get all the main loops in. So I like getting, you know, this big stuff, getting them out of the way and just knowing. Come on. Let's delete those and extrude again. Sometimes it does happen. It just tap on the keyboard, and when it says extrude, extrude the face, the edge. How are we going to connect it here? I remember here I had a bit of trouble. I already did it a few times. And I'm checking whether I can get myself loops later on there as well. Because it's very useful having loops, UV mapping, animation for everything, you know? Okay. Oh, I don't want that dot there. That vertex. Okay. So that's the edge of the mouth. So I'm not sure that will work for the time being. I think I'm gonna leave it like this. Oh yeah, it does work really well. It's a nice loop we can add afterwards. So control and hover over to do another loop if you need. I don't need it at the moment. I was just checking whether it's I'm on the right path for creating later on when I need it. Okay. Now I'm creating a second part of it. Like I said before, I like doing two in a row. It's better. And to be honest, the less geometry is the best in the beginning as we're building up. Because later on I will need to add some more. To be honest, here I don't think I was still sure that I would. I was still figuring out where I'm gonna texture it and how I'm gonna do the UV mapping. So it's always good practice to try and do it good for proper UV unwrapping. When you can. Sometimes you can't really afford actually to. You need to, what we call it, dirty unwrapping, to do a quick one, and it works well. I'll show you later on with when we're doing the environment. I'm doing a quick one. I'm actually not doing anything. I'm just keeping what it's there on the model. And it worked pretty well for the purpose. So it depends on the time. It depends on the requirements. It depends on whether you're doing it for yourself or for somebody else or for what's the purpose and so on and so on. So sometimes we do need to cut corners. because of deadlines, because of resources and whatnot. Like with my big project that I recently completed, hopefully next week we'll be able to post it after it's served its purpose to the customer. So yeah, I had to cut a lot of corners there because we were pressured for time. And yeah, if I had more time, I would have done a lot of things differently for that last project that I did for a customer. But like I said, sometimes we do need to cut corners, and it's doable. Yeah, you can get away with things. You can get away with things if you know which corners to cut and how to cut them. It's useful. Sometimes it speeds up the process as well. So if I can get away with not doing UV unwrapping, why not? Yeah, but most of the time, if you want to have a good texture, you need to have good UVs. ZBrush is the automatic unwrapping in ZBrush. Later on, we'll be doing now. It's pretty awesome. I mean, the normal map works really well. The texture map works really well after we exported it from ZBrush, and it saved us time doing unwrapping. Sometimes just automatic or camera-based unwrapping, or just plane-based unwrapping works really well for the purpose. Yeah, there we go. We've got a nice loop there we can put later on. And there. And if I put that one there. Control and left mouse button to other loop. So now I'm stretching those and I'm thinking, how am I going to connect these ones? I've got my main loops in place. That's the most important. And don't forget, if you don't have your autosave project on, keep saving once in a while. Control S for a quick save. I don't want that. Command Z.